Okay, so here's Buck today. When I brought him out, he clearly needed to burn off some energy, so I said, here you go ahead, go wild. He might not be running around in his paddock. I don't know if it's too muddy and he's just standing instead of getting his energy out. I don't know, but I told him to slow down and he was like, okay, but I'm gonna park trot. So he did that for a little while and I got to test out my GoPro being on my head. So yesterday and the day before, he long lined both days. And then the day before that, he only lunged. And it was a very, very forward lunge, just to burn off some energy. All right, so now he's going to long line. This is an experiment where I put the camera on my head. And it did not go very well, as you'll see, because I cut off his legs the entire time. But I feel like you can kind of see a little bit of his body and his neck. But he was just cranked today. As soon as I told him to walk off, he was trying to like plow through the bridle. So I decided to insist on walking because he was just in a big hurry today. So I'm finally getting where I can actually keep him on the rail, because I would always want to bring his head around to the middle, and that ended up bringing him into the middle. So I've been working on getting him to be up on the rail without having his head turned to the rail the whole time. So when he does like that, I've been trying to bring his head back around to the middle. Usually when he snorts at me, I know he's working hard. There was a lot going on. There was a person with a ladder up on the big house. So he was just very excited today. But I tried to insist on the speed that I wanted. And not letting him blast through my hands. So I feel like sometimes in the lope, in the rein, in the long lines, he gets kind of rooting in the bridle like he is there. And my solution, I don't know if it's right or wrong, but I'll take the rein that's towards me and just kind of lift up and try to lift up the corner of his mouth when he gets to rooting like that. He was just in a big hurry today, so he had to halt and stand. This way is harder for me. I don't know how to keep him on the rail as good this way. And I think it's because he does not want to bend to the middle. It's his harder way. He probably needs adjusted. But he always is tighter this way. So whenever I'm asking him to bend his head to the middle, he just brings his whole body to the middle. And so that's something I've been trying to figure out pretty much just by teaching him, I just want you on the rail, even if I'm not putting you there actively. So I just kind of take a while to get my bearings still, and then I kind of start getting him back over to the rail by slapping him on the shoulder with the line. And he thinks he can just run forward. I think our circle is getting smaller and smaller, so I really turned him to the left to get him over there. But I have a hard time making that last.
Okay.
So the more pressure I put on him to go away from me, he just sees it as pressure to go forward. So he's getting pretty forward instead of yielding.
Boy.
But we're working on it. Stuff going on at the house. Always an excuse to look up and break focus. I think I'm trying to go back to the rail. Get back to the rail. Trying to get some inside bend without bringing him all the way on top of me. This direction I stand a little bit further back, a little bit closer to his rear, I think, to try to push him back over. The other way I stand kind of at his girth. I don't know if that's right or wrong, but he was just kind of lollygagging there first step, so I just asked him to use a little bit more energy. It's a pretty good first right lead lope depart for him, but it's looking pretty lateral. And our circle's getting very small. This harder way, he likes to dive like that a lot more.
Whoa. Walk.
And then I had him do some walk because we were doing so much forward. He just needs to remember that walk is one of our gaits.
Trot. Whoop.
Even though he put his head down for that trot departure, I was glad that he didn't kind of blast forward into it. So even though you can't see his legs at all, I feel like you can see kind of the beginnings of him wanting to roll his butt under. I'm not there yet, but I think you can kind of see his butt starting to work. I'm kind of letting him go out the front door. I think I'm more worried about where his feet are, trying to move him over. And then keeping him from
Whoa.
taking the bit straight down.
Whoa. Good boy.
Good civilized whoa where he didn't yank the reins out of my hand. So right when we started riding, of course, the UPS man came. Any excuse to look around and be distracted. I tried a different camera setting that wasn't as much of a fisheye because I felt like it distorted the actual shape of me and the horse, so you couldn't really tell. It looked like we were leaning all the time or crooked. I mean, we are, but it looked, way worse than it actually was. So I made it a little bit less wide angle, but then that resulted in a little bit of a blind spot on each side. So I'm starting to try to put him together and walk. And he wants so bad to have his butt just completely haunches in. So my solution to that is inside leg back, outside leg a little bit more forward, kind of pushing his shoulder in and butt out. And then I've asked him to do just a complete shoulder in because it was not getting done. So he was just still throwing his butt to the middle. So I said, fine, we're just going to actually shoulder in as best we can. I do think it was a mistake to line him in this twisted snaffle. I think I was a little bit out of mouth by this point. I would try to have some bounce in the reins, and I feel like he would just go right out the front door if I gave him an inch. So probably burned through our mouth a little bit. He didn't feel quite as responsive as I had hoped. He's probably also a little sore because he's been getting back to work since we've had a few nice days. So he had a couple days off, and then I guess we've been hitting it kind of hard this week, so can't blame him for that. I was pretty pleased with that lope departure, even though he's sneezing at me, which I think is a good sign because it means he's working hard. He didn't throw his head up or throw his body out of whack to start loping. He is trying to take the bit away from me an awful lot, so I feel like I was fighting with him a lot today. He's getting a little bit better about having some play in the rain. It's still tugging quite a bit. So then I decided to make a smaller circle. When we do this reverse, one way seems a lot harder for him. I think that has a lot to do with A, needing adjusted, because it hasn't been adjusted since probably October. And that always seems to help him. And, I always wonder if there's a back leg bothering him, since he has such a hard time with that right lead. So he'll go around this foot very well. But going back the other way, he seems to have a harder time. Kind of goes, okay. Same thing this way. He would love to throw his butt to the middle. I think this is the point in the ride when I thought, you're not really respecting my hands enough. So there was a little bit when I just decided to see what would happen if I was just a little bit tougher on him about not pulling the reins. And I think that's when I kind of felt like it really wasn't doing as much good as it should normally. So this was a good lesson in how to run out of mouth. But I think when his body gets totally tuned up, he'll have an easier time, carrying himself, and won't try to just blast forward instead of work hard at going slow, which when he's trying to avoid working hard going slow, then that's when he's trying to run through his bit. So I'm hoping that it's part conditioning too. He's got his little ears up because the UPS truck came. So this is a thing that I have such a hard time with. His left lead is so comfortable that it took me that whole half of a lap to realize that I was on the wrong lead. And I was looking down at his leg and I was like, this looks like the wrong lead, but it feels so right. Because this lead is so god awful and feels so wrong because it's so stiff. So that's something I'm just still going to be struggling with. So I'm doing the best I can to really sit up tall in this really uncomfortable lope, and I guess right there I need to let him go on a little more. But when it gets real piecey, I think he's about to, he'll switch leads behind. So when it gets real lateral, I get where I want to perch on top of him because it's something about, I feel like sitting down real heavy on him is going to make it worse. I don't know why I feel like that, but so I'm working really hard to keep my upper body back and kind of ride his back legs, but when it gets too hard for him, he just swaps behind. So I think right there I needed to just keep him going forward a little bit more and keep pushing his ribs to the outside. Sometimes when he does that, I get intimidated, like there's something wrong with him, and then I just don't push through it. So I think today I was like, let's just keep going and seeing if this direction, the slope can get better. I think he swapped, and that's why we stopped. I'm pretty happy with that, I think. Maybe it's a tad more forward than what we were doing before. Looking at the UPS truck. And then I just let him stretch a little bit while I kind of decided, is that all I need to do? And I thought, yeah, he's worked pretty hard. So then we called it a day. And that's it. Good job, Buck.